I still think that there's such a huge gap in terms of financial knowledge, especially in the Black community. And so I decided that I wanted to create this platform to teach people how to create a 6 or 7 figure retirement income, because they can do it. I was able to create a 7 figure retirement income on my salary. So I know a lot of people who make 6 figures or multiple 6 figures or less than 6 figures, and they have like no retirement plan, they have no financial knowledge. And so that's where I feel like I want to bridge that gap and really help people to understand that they can build wealth.
You're listening to the Rich State of Mind Show, the podcast made to make you the total package in the entrepreneurial world and give you what we call a rich state of mind. If you are here looking to learn about real estate investing, marketing, elevating your business, and developing your mindset to get to the next level, then you are at the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join our community on richstateofmind.com. Now here's your host, Anthony Ritchie.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Rich State of Mind. I'm talking to Tanya Taylot. She came to America alone at 16 years old, undocumented actually. And despite all those obstacles that comes with that, she was able to purchase her first home at 25, be a college graduate, debt-free, and became a part owner in a small business. Over the last 2 decades, she's been teaching others personal finance topics ranging from credit, budget, debt, investing, and tax planning. She also has over 600,000 in her college portfolio for her teenage daughters and has a 7-figure retirement portfolio as well. So Tanya definitely is the person to talk to as far as starting from nothing and being able to make something of yourself. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation with her, because sometimes we kind of talk about the good things and where everybody's already at. But I wanted a more down-to-earth episode where we could talk about somebody having some humble beginnings and taking step by step to get to where they are today. It's possible for anybody. Everybody's gonna have different obstacles, but if you stay consistent, continue to work hard, and continue to educate yourself, I do truly believe that you can be successful in your own way. So as always, thank you for listening, and please enjoy. Hey, Tanya, thanks for taking the time this evening over on the East Coast, both of us. So I appreciate you showing for this episode, because like I was telling you before we started recording, you have a beautiful story that I can't wait for you to share. So if you could please just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure, thank you. And it's very good to be here. So thank you for having me. Okay, so I'm actually a CPA by background, and I hold an MBA in strategic management. And I've spent 23 years now on Wall Street, actually turning 24 years, where I've worked mainly with banks and insurance companies. And I've touched pretty much any large bank that you could think of, a name of a large bank. I've worked with them in some capacity. And I work primarily with senior level management within these organizations. And a lot of stuff that I have learned on these different engagements with these banks really helps to translate what is a Wall Street speak to say to Main Street for me. So that's my professional career. Personally, so just a little bit about who I am before I got to Wall Street. I actually came to America when I was 16. I came here alone. I was an undocumented 16-year-old. I left my parents, my entire family, because, we were very poor growing up in Jamaica, and I had the opportunity to come here. And so my parents just sort of found someone to help me to stay with them. And so I moved here. I had $100 and I came here. But for me, it was sort of like this golden ticket. When you see American Idol and someone wins that golden ticket, well, that's how I felt, because I felt it was an opportunity of a lifetime, and I would be able to not just help myself, but I would be able to help my family as well. And so what surprised me the most when I came here was seeing people living paycheck to paycheck. Because when we saw people coming back to Jamaica, we just always thought everyone was rich. And so when I came here, I was like, I'm going to be rich. I didn't know how I was going to be rich, but I know I was going to be rich. And then I was going to be able to help myself and help my family. Once I saw everyone living paycheck to paycheck, though, I was still undaunted. I was just thinking there has to be a way. So the first thing that I thought of doing was going back to school. And I was able to pay my way through college. So I graduated college a little bit later than the typical student. I graduated at 25, but also because I was undocumented, I wasn't able to get scholarships, etc. So I started budgeting at 16. So I had my little budget and I saved from my $75 to go back to college. Saved for college, graduated at 25, no student loan. By then I'd also purchased a home. And later on, like right after I graduated college, I started to talk to my friends. We were all now in corporate America, like, hey, let's start an investment club. And so I co-founded a stock market investment club with a couple of friends of mine, and I ran it for like about 6 years. Then when that started dying down, we started to have children. I actually started also a children's financial education club where I felt like the gap was so wide in terms of just financial knowledge in general. And I wanted to start teaching children about it. So I taught children about it. I also aligned myself with different organizations. So I just immersed myself in personal finance because I just felt like that's a way to get rich. I had worked at Goldman Sachs during undergrad, and I saw a lot of the bankers, struck up friendship with a lot of them and understood like how they made money. So I felt like, hey, if I can do this and I can teach other people as well, then that would be a great way to help other people to stop living paycheck to paycheck. And that's what helped me at some point when my children were getting older, they were becoming teenagers. And I was thinking about, okay, what can I do now? It led to the creation of my Grow Your Wealth financial education platform, because I still think that there's such a huge gap in terms of financial knowledge, especially in the Black community. And so I decided that I wanted to create this platform to teach people how to create a 6 or 7 figure retirement income, because they can do it. I was able to create a 7-figure retirement income on my salary. So I know a lot of people who make 6 figures or multiple 6 figures or less than 6 figures, and they have like no retirement plan, they have no financial knowledge. And so that's where I feel like I want to bridge that gap and really help people to understand that they can build wealth.
So the first thing is that you graduate from college debt free because you paid for it all. And so
Yes.
what you're saying is that it's possible to cash flow your college.
It's possible for what?
For people to cash flow their college.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Because
And I will say that I did go to a city college, but still, I remember when I started college, I started junior college first. I literally was making $140 a week, but I was able to save and be able to pay for junior college. And then when I went to get my 4-year degree, same thing, I was just able to save to pay for it. So I didn't have to go into student loan debt. I also believe that even if I was able to take out student loans, it's not something that I would have wanted to do. So I would have saved to do it anyway.
You think that's possible to do it now?
For city college and state college, absolutely.
Because the idea, the notion is that without a student loan, it can't be done, or grants or scholarships. Maybe growing up, I heard a few people cash flow themselves, but in today's time, I don't hear it at all. It's either student loan or I don't go to school, or they join the military so they can go to school for free.
Yeah, but I think it's also a mindset thing, right? Because we will say we can't pay for college, but we'll go out and buy expensive things, which it's not a bad thing to buy expensive things, but we got to prioritize. Like, do I want to be saddled with the student loan forever? My husband too, like he may have taken out some loans for grad school and he didn't take out a lot, but he also didn't take out student loans for undergrad either, and he could have. So it is possible.
And so what I also see is that not only were you graduated at the age of 25, but you also was a homeowner at the age of 25. So what was that process like? So young, you are debt free as far as college. How did you have the money you saved up for that too? Like, explain that process.
Yeah, so that was interesting, right? Because so as I said, when I came, so I lived with this family, and when I first moved in with them, I was making $75. I had to pay them $20 every week. So it's out of the 75, I was giving them $20 every week. And so then eventually I started making like $200 a week. I was actually a babysitter. And I did the certificate program. And out of that program, I went from making $200 a week. I got this job on site at Goldman Sachs, and I was making like almost $40,000 a year. And I was 20, when I went to Goldman Sachs, I was like 22. So what I did was I continued to live like I was making the $200, and I saved everything else. So I was still living with the family. And I remember, I told you I wanted to be rich and I wanted to use real estate to do it.
Yeah.
So I remember thinking, okay, I could move out from living with them and go rent a place, or I could just really save and just buy a place that I could rent parts of it. So I ended up purchasing this house, and the idea was that I was going to rent two parts of the house, and then I was going to live on the ground floor. I was single. That was it. It didn't work out that way because, unfortunately, people took advantage of me and they kind of moved into my house and they didn't pay their bills. So they kind of took over the house. It was really bad. They were mortgaging it to fit their lifestyle, but they felt that because they helped me, that they were entitled to do this. And so they kept ruining my credit. And so a lot of things that I had plans for didn't work out that way. My goal was to use this property and purchase other properties because I had excellent credit and I had the cash flow, but I just wasn't able to do it because they wouldn't pay their bills and they would always ruin my credit. So I also had to pivot to find other things to do. So owning the house was great, but it turned out to be a burden for a really long time. And so, eventually I got married. My husband and I ended up purchasing another house together, and then we owned.
But what happened? What happened with the property? What did you end up doing with that property?
The property that the people took over?
Yeah.
So it took me 17 years. Like, they lived in it for 17 years. I got it back after 17 years, but it was in a state of disrepair. So I had to and it had a high mortgage. So I still am able to now, I fully own it now. So I'm able to actually get rental income from it. I've repaired it. And now I'm able to get rental income from it. But unfortunately, it didn't solve the goal that I had for it, which was to use it to acquire additional properties. So
it just got a bit left after 17 years?
Oh, no, I had to fight them.
Oh, okay.
There was a lot of, I guess because they helped me, so they felt they were entitled. And so there was a lot of manipulation. It took years and years, lots of therapy. And eventually I just kind of found my voice, and I was like, you guys got to move out of my property. I need my property back. And so we almost went to court, but eventually they just packed up, they just moved, and I was able to get my property back.
They raised the whole family in there. They raised the whole family.
They did. And they built their house. They did so many different things. Yeah.
That's a very interesting story. I've never heard of squatting for 17 years, maybe a year tops. But I know in places like New York and California that happens a lot. Sheesh, yeah, that is a story there. All right, so throughout the years, between 25, we'll say all the way up until now, kind of give us kind of a little bit of a blueprint as to how you were able to save up so much for not only for yourself but for your children as well. Because like you said, a lot of people, live in paycheck to paycheck. And sometimes we have, I'll see like the certain graphs. Well, 50% expenses, 30% savings, 20% investment. I'm probably missing another 10% there for just, stuff, have fun. Was that something that you had in mind? Because this is very aggressive. So either you had a big shovel, between the two of you and your husband, great paychecks, or y'all had a great budget. Mind you, you lived in New York the whole time, right? New York City. So, listeners, just be aware that New York City living, you're like, oh, well, they make $500,000 a year. Well, New York living is a bit different than those that may, let's say, live in North Carolina. So, but yeah, please explain that.
Yeah. And so just to be clear too, so my husband and we actually keep our finances separate, which is quite interesting. So all of this that I'm talking about is my finances. except we have a house, which when we got married, he purchased. We also got married debt free. So we were big on not taking on debt. And my husband is much more conservative than I am when it comes to money. And so when we got married, we also bought a house where we could rent a part of it. So we also got rental income from that house. So our overall bill wasn't that expensive. And I did make a decent salary, but I always live way beyond my means. And so always had a budget. That was really important. So a couple of things that I did that was really critical was I always maxed out my retirement plan. And then there were times that if my job offered like a 401 a Roth 401k, then I would put some money there. So also before I capped out, because with Roth IRAs, you get capped out after a certain salary. So before I capped out on my salary, I always contributed to my Roth IRA as well. And I just did that every single year. But another thing that I did was also crucial was I don't just put my money in a retirement plan and just kind of let it sit there. I actively manage my retirement plan, meaning that I make sure that I understand, and this came from my auditing days. So I was an auditor and I really learned all the expenses that were in pension plans and all of those different things. And I was able to use that for myself. And whenever I invested in my retirement plan, I look at the aggressive funds because I was still young enough, and also which one are providing the higher return with the lower fees. So those are all things that I looked at. Then when I left from one job to another job, I would take my retirement plan with me. And as I said before, like I was a stock market investor, so I invested in the stock market as well. And that's how I was also able to do that. And then, so that's my retirement plan. Then for my children's college, the first thing that I did, I always set goals. So I've always had this vision board. I always set my goals and I always like try to meet my milestones. So for my children's college, I said I want to save 500,000 for them for college because I want them to be able to go to any college that they choose. And like 90% of their money is invested in the stock market. So I would just go in every year, look to see how much I put in a certain amount and look to see how close I am to meeting my goals. My children are not ready for college yet. Actually, we're going through the college process now for the older one. So she will be starting college next September, 2023.
Awesome.
But the college fund the stock market went down. So the college fund was like about 620,000 last time I checked before the stock market went down. So it went way above what my goal was, which was the 500,000.
So ditto for us. Our daughter will start college in September of 2023 as well.
Ah,
So it's going to be, it is interesting times right now.
yes.
And, you know, that I love the fact that you set that goal. And then, right, it's funny when you have a plan, even it could go sway. I always say 20%, and, you know, I would say nobody quote me on this, but I always like to say that when you have a plan, if 80% of it goes right, then, you know, good. But sometimes you get blessed or lucky and it'll go 120%, it'll work out for you, which in your case, you know, you had the 600,000. So now you really have a wide range. You probably have enough for her to go to any college she wants, plus a monthly stipend, you know, so she doesn't have to work.
And just to be clear, like for my children, I already told them the expectation is that you're going to get scholarships. So this is more like a back pocket if they don't, right? Because for me, it was always, especially the way I grew up. I mean, we were very poor. We were very bright. We went to like the best high school because they were free in Jamaica. But then after that, our parents couldn't pay for us. And it just felt like I didn't want that for my children. I wanted them, my expectation is that they're going to work hard and they're going to go to wherever school they choose to go to. Like I shouldn't tell them that they can't go there when it's time for them to go. And so that's why it was so critical for me. But I also told them, you guys have to apply for scholarship, because if we're talking now about building generational wealth, I want to be able to have that money to help them to get a start when they graduate college, not necessarily pay for college. But if they work hard, they get into a school and they don't get the scholarship, then they will have that money to be able to pay for college and not have to graduate with debt.
Yeah. So I like this. I like the fact that we're talking about this because it's grounded. A lot of the episodes I have, we're talking to entrepreneurs that already kind of like we're talking about now. I want 10 million because I already have the 5. But what we don't talk about often is, okay, what are you doing for your family? How are you setting the foundation, not only for yourself, but for your kids who you know, like me, I had to start from zero at the age of 18. And I'm really, if you, it's not, it doesn't mean anything if you're not doing this in order for it to provide a better lifestyle for your family,
Yeah.
which, kids, my spouse, we'll work it out together. We'll figure it out. We're adults. But at least for my kids, and if I can extend to my nephews and my nephews and my nieces, then that as well. I want to talk about your free master class that you have, and
Mhm.
you talk about the three secrets that you provide. And the first secret was, learn why you feel stuck, and the number one thing that you can do today to become unstuck. Because, and I like the fact this is the first secret, because what you're talking about is it's very freeing. It feels very good that there's a possibility you could get to that point. But if I'm in the position, a lot of people in America, where it's like, well, I don't have the money to do it. I don't see how I can do this, how I can save. That's that stuck feeling. So explain how you get people to, feel unstuck and kind of push them on to start going into green versus going into red.
Yeah. So thanks for that. I think a lot of it comes down to mindset, right? And mindset comes in a lot of different ways, because if you think about how a lot of us grow up, we're clueless about finances, and that goes across all economic spectrum. Like a lot of times money is just not something that's discussed. And then when we think about money, like in certain families, in a lot of families, you hear like money is the root of all evil. You hear that rich people is it's not, it's not good to be wealthy. Some of it come from religious background. So I talk about the number one in my free masterclass, but it's so many different reasons why you're stuck. And I think that the easiest way to become unstuck is to shift the mindset, to start thinking from a place of wealth. Or even if you can't get to that point, because I had someone who came to my program, and when I asked her how much she wanted to retire and the dollar amount she told me, I was just like, I remember just thinking to myself, oh my God, you can't even live on that for 3 years when you retire. So I started her in a very small space. I said, okay, well, let's just move the number to here, so that
Yeah.
even if you can't get to that point of wealth, but if you could think, maybe there's a possibility that I could just come out of this place where I am. And a lot of people are not just living paycheck to paycheck, they're actually spending more than they're earning. So
Yes.
if they could even just think beyond the point, to the point where it's like, if there is a way that I could just spend what I earn, if you start there, then you start peeling back the layers, and then you start figuring out how do you get to that next place. And I tell you, like, people in my program, like, whenever we start there, because I feel like when you take that big leap and you say, okay, you're going to have $1 million, or you're going to have this, people are so afraid to even think that way, that you can't always start them there. You can start them with, okay, let's start with taking a look at your budget and figuring out how we get equal. That's it. That's all we're going to try to do. And then beyond that, we're going to start, once they realize that, because that's a small win. It's a big win in a way, but it's a small win in the grand scheme of things. And then it's like, okay, now that I can do that and I see that I can do that, what else is possible? Let's move to, okay, how's your debt looking, or how's your credit looking? And let's start talking about your retirement. Maybe we could get to 6 figure. And then from that 6 figure, and most time when people hear 6 figure, they automatically think 100,000, but 6 figure could be 9999, right? But you start small, and then you start seeing the shift in the mindset, and then that's when you just leap off into so many different areas that you can make. The sky really is the limit in terms of how much that you can build your wealth.
No, exactly. Especially if you do live by what you actually have. My wife and I was debt free when we got together. Actually, the Dave Ramsey way. That was kind of what I went across. And it's when I got introduced, when my wife got introduced to how I run my household with, bills and everything like that. It was very clear, like, hey, look, it's a, I would say this, it's a shock, it's a shock moment when you realize how far your money really stretches, because you've been living off of credit and stuff like that. So, or just credit cards, loans. if you just use your cash, you're like, wow, okay, I cannot do as much as I wanted.
Correct.
Meanwhile, I kind of think we make pretty decent money. So I always say, well, hey, look, there's people that's not living as good as us, like, so I always try to put that in perspective. But at the same time, I think it would behoove a lot of people in America if they would just at least like not try to emphasize on materialist, things, being a consumer. But that's hard, right? Because all everything is marketing to,
Yes.
get you to buy things. So that's easy. That's definitely easier said than done. But I
But I
think that
also, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead, go
I
ahead.
was going to say, that's why goals are so important, because when you set goals, like you always anchor yourself back to the goal. And I think that's one of the things that's really been helpful to me to be successful in doing the things that I've done. And is that I always set the goals and I go back. So even there are times like my friends and I, so I've been to like 50 countries, so actually a little over 50 countries, but my children have kept me at 50. Anyway, so I travel a lot, and I travel with my friends sometimes, and you get tempted to want to do like these really extravagant vacation, right? And for me, like we'll do some luxury vacation, but we're also going to be like, oh no, we're not doing that. And so I'm very strict. Like if I set a budget for, let's say I'm just going to make up a number. Let's say I set a budget for 2,000 for my vacation. I'm going to stick to that $2,000 because that was my goal. And no matter what's going on, we're going to go back to that 2,000. So if my friends want to go to a fancy restaurant and it's not in my budget, then it's just going to be like, you know what? It's cool. You could go to the fancy restaurant. We're going to go over here this time. And we make it work. And I think that if we don't have a goal and if we don't have a budget for the vacation, then we're just going to go, what are we going to do? We're just going to go, we're just going to spend. And then when we come back, it's like, oh my God, I have all of this debt. So I think goal is really, really critical, because no matter what they're marketing to you, when you go back and you're like, no, what does my budget say? Either you're going to find a way to get that thing that you want, because I don't believe in completely depriving yourself of things. But I think that if you're going to spend wildly on something, then you got to figure out what are you going to cut back on the things that's not as important for you so that you can make it work.
That's you said that very well. And I think that's something that, when it comes to people being able to say, all right, I need to kind of change my life a little bit. And sometimes maybe it does take a couple of things to happen. You ever heard the saying somebody ever said, like, man, this bill came out of nowhere? You heard that before?
Yeah.
You get tired of bills just coming out of nowhere and putting you on your butt every month for you to have to live paycheck to paycheck or something not getting paid. But so, okay, we go to secret number 2, which you said you have 6 steps to creating wealth.
Yes.
And you talked about how that lady, what her goal wasn't even enough to live off of 3 years, where you're trying to create 6 steps to create somebody the opportunity to have 7 figures in retirement. What are those 6 steps?
Yeah, and I've touched on some of them. So like the first thing is like, you got to know what you have, right? How much debt do you have? Do you have life insurance? Do you have disability? So the first step I call get organized. And so my 6th step is grow it. And the first one is get organized. The second step is that you need to build a budget. A lot of people don't like the word budget. And so once they hear it, they're kind of like, oh, I don't want to keep a budget. And the list goes on. If you don't want to keep a budget, you have to have a way to track your spending, because one, when you get organized, you're going to also set goals. Then you're going to align your spending with your goal. And that's where you also see whether or not you're overspending and how you're going to manage that overspending. So at least you're balancing your budget. Then the third is, open an emergency fund. How many of us don't have an emergency fund? During COVID, they were like, Americans have like $400 in the bank. If
That's
that
crazy.
much. So it's crazy. So you want to have some kind of emergency fund if something comes up. 3 to 6 months is ideal, but of course with COVID, you see that even having a little more might be really good. And then next thing you want to do is wipe out your bad debt. So I know Dave Ramsey's like no debt at all. I'm not necessarily that person who says no debt at all, because I feel like you could leverage other people's money when it's necessary. I feel like what you need to wipe out is your bad debt, all of these consumer debts that you're using. And so when you do that, and you have good debt, if you want to say that, because if I'm going to buy a house, I'm going to get a mortgage. I'm going to make that mortgage work for me.
Yeah.
So when you have that, then you're able to, now you have your budget, you have your emergency fund, you have your debt under control, you invest, and you don't have to have all three of those perfect before you start investing, because there are ways to do that too. But then you'll be able to have that money that now you can start invest. So the fifth step, because the fourth step was wipe out your bad debt. The fifth step is to invest and grow. So now you're going to max out your 401k, or if you can't max it out yet, that's okay. Can you put an extra 2% in? You do that. You start saving towards the college fund if you are someone who wants to help your child to fund their college education. And if you're not, you also have to think about the fact that a lot of times parents are still required to sign that debt, right? Even if you're like, I'm not going to pay for my child's debt, you still have to sign. So you have to think about those things. So you're investing, you're diversifying your portfolio. You're thinking about what are the different things that you invest in. It could be stocks, it could be real estate, it could be the different type of mutual funds that exist on the market. And lastly is what I call think big picture. And this is where, right, you've done all of this stuff. Are you going to meet your goal? If you're not going to meet your goal, then maybe you think about, okay, what can I do besides my income and the investment income that I'm getting? Maybe start a business so I could generate additional income. In addition to that, you have to think about estate planning, because if you did all of this and you're not able to protect what you've built to pass down to your children or to pass down to your charity, then a lot of that would be in vain. You want to think about also insurance protection. So all of those are things that you want to think about in the big picture thinking. Overall, what do I want everything to look like in retirement? And as you're going through these 6 steps, you're thinking about when you want to retire, right? So that's a part of your goal setting so that you're able to meet that goal. You're able to think about, if I have a shortfall because I'm starting late, how am I going to be able to meet that shortfall?
So there's a few things that I want to talk about within this. Between secret 1 and secret 2 is, and I'll use you as an example, finding creative ways to try to expedite your goal. And one way that you and your husband did is that you basically house hacked the house that you bought. You have somebody else paying, a good portion of your mortgage, which frees up a good amount of money in order to put into savings or whatever else you wanted to do. And so that's something I didn't want to make sure I missed, because I want people to hear that. Find creative ways. I know some people like their own privacy, and maybe they wouldn't want to Airbnb their room, but hey, how bad do you want it? Everything that you want, you got to find some type of sacrifice.
Absolutely. And so I like living in New York, right? I have friends who say, I will only buy a single family home. I do not want tenants. And I remember when my husband and I were looking, we were like, we'll only buy a house that we could have tenants, because we don't want to be paying the mortgage by ourselves, because it's going to take us to our goals faster.
Yep.
So,
and then also, how do you budget? Do you have a budgeting app that you use?
I use Spreadsheet.
Okay.
I know there are a lot of apps out there, but I have found that my trusted and true Spreadsheet helps me, because I got to go into my spreadsheet. But what I say to people and even to my clients, I'm like, if an app works for you, use an app. If the spreadsheet is going to make you not budget, then use the app. But you have to find something that works. For me, if I try to use an app, it's not going to work. I already know that, and I won't do it. But with my spreadsheet, because I go in, I make my budget, and I actually calculate my actual to my budget. Am I in line with it? And I could see it there. I'm a visual person, so I need to see it there. And maybe there are some apps that do that. I haven't explored all the apps, but whatever works for anyone who's listening, I would say if the app works for you and it's going to be easier for you, do it. But budgeting is really important no matter what you hear, because you need to know how your dollars are coming in and what's going out and how you're aligning that with your goal.
So I do both. I write our budget out, but I also use this budgeting app called Truebill. I liked it because I was able to cancel subscriptions and identify what was reoccurring in our accounts. Because as we were transitioning, because we just moved about 3 months ago. So as we were transitioning, I wanted to kind of really get a good screenshot, okay, or snapshot, like, all right, what are our expenses here? Because our mortgage is just almost doubled by moving into this. Our
Mm,
family grew recently.
uh-huh.
So I was like, yeah, everything needs to be like on a magnifying glass. So being that these apps can track more than I ever could as far as all the transactions that are happening in live, obviously live, and then categorizes, okay, we spent this much on groceries, this much going to the movies, you spent this much eating out. That's a no-no. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's what I kind of like about it. We have like family meetings weekly, like my daughter and my wife, like, hey, come on, going to Wendy's too much. And then they got this ice cream there that they like.
Uh,
So,
so I'm actually going to look into this because I feel that whatever is helpful to people, and if this is a great app that people find useful, then I definitely also want to share it with my clients for those who just like, I don't want to do the spreadsheet.
yeah, it's
So
simple.
that's good. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, there's a premium version too. I think it's $5 a month. So
Oh, okay.
I can't remember why I bought the premium, but I thought it was worth it at the time.
Got
So,
it.
but there are options for that app.
Okay. And I did want to say one thing. So one of the things that I did with my children too, and they've been doing this since they were probably about 7, like I gave them a credit card. And the idea around the credit card was to teach them about budgeting. So they always have to create a budget. They've been doing it for many, many years now, and their budget flows into our budget.
Mm-hmm.
But then I gave them a credit card, and the one that I actually used was Greenlight credit card. And the reason why I used that was because it actually tells you, like it gives them a certain dollar amount to spend in certain places. And I felt like it was a great way to teach them responsibly how to spend. So it was like savings automatically when they get their allowance, 10% automatically goes to savings. And then 10% went to charity. And then the 80% is allocated. So they could add to it, like, let's say Starbucks, like one of them loved to drink Starbucks. So it's Starbucks, the stores that they want to shop. And so they were able to control their spending. Now that they're getting older, and I feel like more responsible because I'll hear them talking about their budget all the time, they don't necessarily need that app. And then we don't have to have these discussions like, why are you spending this here? Because they now manage their own money on this Greenlight card. And now that they're getting older and they have to manage their money, it'll be a matter of watching them to see how they spend and whether or not, the things that I've taught them over the years, if they've really are applying them as they should be.
What age did you start for them?
So I started my children's education club when my children the oldest one was about 4, so the youngest one was 2. And then we started talking about budget from about that time. So we'd be in the supermarket and you'd hear my children like, what's her budget, mommy? And people would be looking at us like, what? But, and so my older one she was very good with math from a young age. So I would say to her, $10. And you would see her going, calculate out, okay, we could get this cereal, we could get this, we could get that. So for them, it's almost automatic. When we were going on vacation, they would have a vacation budget as well. So if we're going to Florida, to Disney, well, maybe you can't do SeaWorld, Disney World, Epcot, maybe you can't do all of them because if you only have $300, maybe you could only go to 3 theme parks. So
Interesting.
So we've been doing that for quite some time now.
Yeah, so my wife and I, we got a non-custodial credit card for our 16 and a 9-year-old so that we could build their credit. But what I did not think about is having them on a daily basis, because as adults, this is what we do on a daily basis. We count our money. Probably more times than I would like, just have, all right, cool. How much I got? All right, cool. I can do this. I can do that. And not to put a lot of pressure on them, but just to give them understanding and appreciation of how fast money can go and what you can do with it. Because I knew there had to be a change of perspective when our daughter was like, "Oh yeah, it's just $900." Then my wife like, we got to have that talk, because the fact that our kid thinks that, shrugs her shoulders like $900 is nothing. Nah, we got to talk.
Yeah.
So I will definitely look into that myself, and anybody that's listening, you find the appropriate time where you feel like your kids can do that, and then, like you said, incorporate it into your budget, because it's probably money that you maybe spent already on them. My son, he likes Pokemon cards, so I have him do extra chores around the house in order to get the Pokemon cards. that's how I justify any money that I would spend, because I wanted to, I had the concept of obviously earn, for the extra things. But I know there's a lot of parents, we just get our kids things here and there. So instead of just giving it to them, maybe they have this particular amount of money in there on that card, and oh man, I can't get this thing if I buy this. So, all right, let me figure out how I'm gonna, should I save for something big?
Yeah.
It's those decisions, right, that they have to make in their
Yeah,
head.
it really makes them think, because it's a finite amount of money. And because they could tap me for cash, but it would have to be for something that's completely outside of what they would have normally, like an emergency. Then I'm like, okay, I'll give you this. But other than that, oh no, this is your budget for the week and that's it.
And then we have step 3, or secret 3, which is how to start, which I think we've kind of talked about, the setting goals.
Yes.
Right. Setting goals, living within your means. Within that step 3, secret 3, as far as how to start, I want you to kind of explain to me, because you talked about how your spouse and you, you have your budget is separate, or your finances are separate. But at the same time, obviously you guys are on the same page with your goals. Explain to me what's that process like, as far as two partners being on the same page for so long, and being able to pivot, maneuver whenever need, and being able to agree, obviously, maybe disagree on certain things, obviously, but for the most part, agree, hey, this is what we need to do for the kids. This is what we need to do for the budget. What's that like?
So believe it or not, my husband thinks I'm a spendthrift. Like, I'm just like, you have got to be kidding, but he does. So my husband is he's much more conservative with money. And so when we budget, right, a lot of like the household things, I usually just budget for. My husband takes care of a lot of the house expenses, meaning like the utilities, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in terms of our overarching goal, we know that we don't want to work till retirement age, like not even 60. So we have a pot which we want to make sure that we'll be able to live from whenever we do decide to retire. So that's the biggest thing for us. Like with the children's college, it was really because my passion was investing. And I was just like, $500,000, I'm just going to save it. So like he never really has to even think about it, but he's also doing his savings. So at the end of the day, both of those are going to merge more for our retirement than for anything else. The day-to-day things, like we just kind of, I don't even know how to explain it. We just kind of make it work. Again, he doesn't spend a lot. He's more conservative. So he's just saving more, I guess. And then for me, like vacation is a big thing. So like I'll put a lot in vacation. And then when he doesn't travel as often as we do. So whenever he comes to vacation with us, like, we'll do vacation together. But a lot of times it's just like, okay, this is my thing. This is what I like. And so I'm going to do it, which is why sometimes he thinks I'm a spendthrift, because it's like, you take like 5 vacations a year. Like who does that? And I'm like, but I do all this other stuff. So it's just a matter of, it's almost like there's nothing written in stone, like this is how we do it. He has his budget, he knows what he's responsible for, and then I have my budget and I know what I'm responsible for, and it just kind of worked that way.
And everybody's responsible.
Yeah. I think that's the key. Like if you're both on the same page in terms of, we have this overarching goal of what we want to ultimately achieve, then the little things in between is just like
the Wendy's ice cream cones. Those are the little things in between.
Yeah.
And so what I always like to ask everybody before I let them go is, what is their rich state of mind? What's their big why? You had a very determined goal and mindset at a very young age, where people don't even know what they want to do 3 times your age when you decided to start this journey at 16. What was your big why?
My big why was 3 things, right? Maybe it was more, but I wanted to help my family and I wanted to help myself. So I remember nights when we didn't know if we're going to have dinner, and I knew that I never wanted that for either myself, my family, meaning my husband and children, or my family in Jamaica. I really wanted to help them. So that was one. The second one was that I wanted to be able to travel the world. And so a lot of things was anchored around that. Very superficial, I know, but I wanted that. And so I was just like, I'm going to do it. You got to enjoy life while you're alive. And thirdly, and I didn't want to have to wait until I retire. So that was really, really important to me. And thirdly, my biggest why is that I want to create a charity. I do a lot of work with children. And again, because of the poverty, being able to help children so that they can go to school and get an education and just like create a rich life. And so for me, that's my biggest why. I want to be able to be a philanthropist. I never say that word right, but you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, that's what I want to do. And so everything that I have done from the time I was 6, so maybe at 16, I didn't know that's what I wanted to do, but from my 20s, I knew ultimately that's what I wanted to do. And so like, I could have my career now and just be totally okay for forever based on what we've built. But for the big goals that I have, that I want to help these children, I'm talking about, I want to be able to give millions of dollars away. And I want to be able to, in order to do that, I want to be able to also help people along the way. So teach people how to build wealth too, and just be able to do that. So it's like a whole bunch of things, but ultimately that's my goal.
No, and it's a very, there's no right answer when it comes to, you know, anybody's why, but that is a very philanthropic goal that you have.
I always say that's my Jamaican accent right there.
So, and lastly, where can people find you? I want to make sure people find you and your program.
Sure. So on Instagram, I'm at Grow Your Wealth 10x. And my website is also growyourwealth10x.com. And they can also find me on Facebook, Tanya Taylor, CPA, MBA, Grow Your Wealth. So, and I'm also on YouTube, actually, Grow Your Wealth TV. So there's a lot of different ways that people can reach me. And if anyone has any questions, they can always feel free to reach out to me as well.
Awesome. And thank you so much, Tanya. I really appreciate you and your story on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me too. This was great.
Thank you for sticking with us from the start of the episode. Please share our show with friends and family, visit our YouTube channel, and view more of our content on richstateofmind.com. See you next week on the Rich State of Mind Show.